Ah. There you got to live a lot of that with me. I'm Ron, and I'm an alcoholic. And you don't know, I know if you've stood up here before, what a gift it is to be able to stand up here, to be even asked to stand up here, because I absolutely had nothing to tell anybody about anything about good living, about getting sober, about becoming a person that you could never dream to being, about surrendering to Alcoholics Anonymous. What you got from me was a guy that would come in here. I would say I was an alcoholic. I would talk a bunch of crap, and then I would go get loaded. And I didn't do it once or twice. I did it from 1983 to 2010. Yeah. Woo, what a trip. And, my mind's been telling me all morning, well, since Larry asked me yesterday, yesterday morning, it's been saying, okay, just tell the truth. But I don't know about you guys, I got 2 brain cells left. And one says, Ron, just tell the truth. And the other one says, you can't handle the truth, asshole. Sorry. That's my other one. That's what it talks about. It's always telling me that it ain't going to happen. You're crazy. You're no good. I have that one brain cell left, that one thing on me. It's been with me my whole life. I never even took a drink and I had it on me. My mom, I used to go to school, and I always felt like the outside looking in. Always. I always had that feeling. I don't know why. I just did. And my mom dressed me funny other than that. And besides that, I just want to tell the truth. I'll start with this. I was born a poor black child in Tupelo, Mississippi. I got that off Steve Martin, the jerk. I always thought that was so funny. I always wanted to say that. God's been good to me. Like I said, I'm Ron, and I'm an alcoholic, and that tells you guys a lot about me. And the one thing I never wanted to be was an alcoholic. I didn't want to be like my dad. I wanted to be like my mom. I promised myself, even as a little kid, I would promise myself, I don't want to be like them when I grow up. I mean, it was a deep promise, because there was a lot of violence in my house. I didn't know how bad it affected me, but as I went through my life, and as I've gotten sober, as I've gotten to look back, I guess it developed a lot of character defects. It helped develop a lot of character defects that I carry around today. I used to get, I'm not just, my mom, okay, I'll tell you, they loved me, first of all. I know that today. So the way I got adopted was, my real mom was in this apartment, and they were upstairs, my dad said, and they would hear me cry all night long. My mom and dad that adopted me lived beside my real mom. And they would hear me cry all night long. And one day they went over there, knocked on her door, and said, hey, Susie, if you want to go out at night, just leave Ron, the baby over here with us. We'll take care of him while you go out, and when you come home, you can pick him back up. And so she come over and dropped me off one night and never came back to pick me up. But that's okay, because you can imagine the life that I would have had with her. But they ended up adopting me, and then they ended up adopting 3 more kids from her. So I have 3 half-brothers and sisters. And then her sister, my mom and dad adopted 2 kids from her sister. So I had 2 first cousins as my brother and sister. And my mom and dad did the best they could. My story used to be, and it's still the truth, they should have raised rattlesnakes and not kids. And my mom and dad, it was a very violent home. It was scary. I was a kid that was there was a lot of screaming, yelling, cussing, beating, stabbing, shootings. It wasn't safe in my house. Our house burnt down 3 times as a little kid. I knew when I heard fire alarms, like if I was at school riding home on my bike, I knew if I heard fire sirens and stuff like that, they were headed to my house. If I ever heard sirens, they were always headed to my house, no matter where I was at. If I heard them around my block, they were going to my house, just because it was that crazy, and like I said, our house burned down 3 times, and it was all because of little kids burning down the house, playing with matches and mad and hurt and scared and, just treachery. And I grew up there, and like I said, as I've gotten sober, I've got to look back on that a lot. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, we get to find our part in everything. And I had a big part in that whole deal of growing up that I never knew I had. and we'll get to that later, you know, and Alcoholics Anonymous absolutely saved my life and absolutely saved a black, dark, hateful heart that just couldn't understand why he couldn't quit getting loaded, you know, until I got to the fourth and fifth step, you know, and as I went on through the years of growing up there, my mom and dad tried to help me desperately. They put me in 5 different treatment centers before I was 18. That's love, isn't it? I mean, that's good stuff there, you know. And I forgot about all that, you know, before I got sober. I forgot about all the stuff they tried to do to help me, you know. And one time I remember I was in a treatment center, and this is one of the last times I was in a treatment center that they put me in. I was in Norman Detox, and it's Norman State Hospital. So there, it's a lot of people that's been locked away, criminally insane, that's been locked away the rest of their lives. And I was in the same, not the same building, but right next to that building, in another building, in a detox, clean and sober place. But we always got to mix it up with them a little bit because we went over and ate in their cafeteria. And I'll never forget, you know, the people walking around like this, and then, you know, just really, really broken people, you know, and here I am, 16, 17 years old, inside this place, and this is freaking me out, man. You know, it's just like, it really did. And then they got me in the middle of this circle, and these counselors got around me, and all these people got around me, you know, that were inside they were clean and sober. They used to be pretty vicious, clean and sober. They would tell you what your problem is. They would be mean to you. They would yell at you. And they used to tell me, I guess my mom had been in there. My real mom had gone there. When I was a kid, or, you know, before she died, you know, she had gone there and was in there 3 or 4 times in both parts of the place. And they would tell me, you're going to end up just like your mom. And I'll never forget that, man, you know. And I remember some of the visions of my real mom. She would, because they were friends, my mom that adopted me, and, you know, my parents that adopted me, my real mom. And she would come over and visit every now and then. And I would never forget this, and it just blew me away. She had, and I'm not going to say 10 or 15, she had hundreds of cuts on her arm, on both arms. And I didn't understand that. I didn't know what that was from. I didn't get it. You know, and they were deep cuts. A lot of them were just very, very deep cuts. And it's just like, as I've gotten sober, I've got to look back on that a little bit more. And like I said, the steps help us clear some of those resentments away and see that some people were just sick like me. You know, and that's Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyway, they're yelling and screaming at me, telling me I'm going to be just like my mom, and it's freaking me out. And I was in there 89 days, 90 days. I don't know, it was a 120-day or 6-month thing, you know. And I called my best friend up, and this is what I used to do to my mom and dad. I called my best friend up, and Mark Bowen come picked me up, you know, in his Camaro, and I jumped the fence, and I left the program and ran, boy, I was out of there, and jumped in his car, and we went over to my buddy's house, and my buddy, I started drinking a beer too, as soon as I got out, of course, you know, and then he had some white powder. I snorted this big old line of white powder, and I don't remember what happened after that. I ended up getting pushed out of my car, Kenny's car, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and the only part I remember is crawling to my mom and dad's door, knocking on the bottom of the door, slobbering. I was just OD'd. I don't even know what I snorted, you know, and they called the cops, and my mom came out and started screaming at me, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong?" And I didn't know what was wrong with me, and the cops come and arrested me. They thought I was safe in a recovery center, and that's the way I came home to them, on the bottom of the porch, you know, knocking at the bottom of the door. And that's kind of my disease, you know, where I was as a kid. You know, and I was taking anything that would knock me completely out of it. I was mainly a Jack Daniels Wild Turkey drinker. I loved that stuff. It was my greatest. I called that, after I'd get drunk on Wild Turkey, I started calling it Wild Chicken. Woo! More Wild Chicken, you know. I went off this rope. It's called Little River, and we had a rope on it, and I don't know, midnight, so I'm off on the rope. I'm naked all but my boots. I lost my boots that night too, in the river. But anyways, this, you know, that's kind of some of the drinking we did, and I got into lots and lots and lots of fights. When I drank, I usually got in a fight growing up, because I thought that's how I thought I had to be. I thought I had to be tough. And you know, and I really was never that tough. I got beat up a lot. But that's just kind of a portion of my childhood. I was at school. I'll tell you one other part, and then I'll move on. I was at work, and I got my motorcycle license at 14. Isn't that cool? That's kind of cool. And freedom, and I got a job at this place called Del Rancho, and my first job was Sonic when I was 12. But anyway, I got this job at Del Rancho, and my dad called me, and he goes, "Son, I've shot your mom." I said, "Oh, God." So he goes, "You better come home." So I said, "Okay," and so I tell my boss I got to go, and I ride home, and he tells me, "Me and your mom got in this big fight, and he's drunk. He's so hammered, and he's not a violent guy neither. My dad was never violent. My mom was always the violent one. My mom was vicious, and she would beat my dad to death, and he would let her, and it's just craziness." And so anyway, I got home, and he goes, "What happened is they got in this big fight. She ran back to the bedroom, pulled the pistol out of the drawer, shot it out the window. He thought she shot herself. He runs back there, kicks the door in because it's locked, and they wrestle over the gun, and it goes off in her stomach. And so she goes to the hospital, and she's in the hospital for 4 months. I never went and visited her one time. I hated her. I thought the way she was raising us kids and the way she was the reason I was the way I was. And I carried that with me my whole life. And here's the little part about my alcoholism and the disease of alcoholism, how it tells us things. And like I told you, I was a poor black child in Tupelo, Mississippi, right? That I would believe that if I told myself that for long enough. And it's absolutely not true, right? But I would absolutely believe that because I absolutely believe that the reason I am the way I am is because of my mom and the way I was raised. I believed that at 100%, a complete belief. And that caused hate, discontent, viciousness for anybody that ever knew me. And I was a liar. I was such a liar. I would tell a lie when the truth was better. I was just a liar, man. I lied about everything. And it's just always lied. And it's just part of my disease. And so I met this girl, and we got married in Oklahoma. I knew her 6 weeks before we got married. I was in jail 3 of those weeks. She was a real keeper. That whole situation saved my life. She lived out here in Redding, California, and her mom and dad was not going to leave her in Oklahoma with me. They weren't going to do it. And I was working in the oil field. I was on a real winning streak anyway. I just got out of jail. And they come up to me, and I just got another drunk driving. I had 2 drunk drivings real young. I was eating Quaaludes and drinking Jack Daniels and rabbit hunting. I had a big rifle in the back of the truck, Told the cop what I thought of his mom. Anyway, so we just craziness. So he arrested me, and I went to jail, and like usual. And anyway, so I'm in jail 3 of those weeks, and 3 weeks, and I get out, and I'm back to work in the oil field, and her mom and dad comes to me. She says, "Ron, I'll buy you a pickup if you'll move out to Redding, California with us." And I thought, I was on a real winning streak like this. I thought, yeah, I'd love to do that. You bet, sure, I'm game, let's go. But I was on probation. So, usually you come to Shasta County and leave on probation, right? Well, I came to Shasta County on probation. Just the way it was, They accepted me, and so I got to come here. I had to check in the probation office here, and I had 3 felonies, and they were violent felonies and burglaries and assaults and stuff like that right there, and just craziness. And so I came to Shasta County on probation, and I moved up to Happy Valley with Robin and her family. They bought us a 40-foot mobile travel trailer that we lived on their property. And I didn't know nothing about families. I didn't know nothing about sitting down at dinner and having dinner, really, and chatting as you talk. They had 5 or 6 brothers. She had 5 brothers and sisters. And her mom and dad were awesome, Aunt Millie and Wahoo. And them people treated me really good. And I don't know why I'm crying about that. But anyway, they were really good to me. And I learned a little bit about family. And I tell you what, it saved my life. Saved my life for them to bring me out here. Now, while I was out here, Wahoo says, "I'm going to teach you this trade," and so he made this bucket of aluminum asphalt, threw a ladder in the back of the truck that he bought me, and says, "Go knock doors and tell these people you'll do their seams, vents, and edges for $175. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I didn't think I could do that, but I said, okay, I'll do that because I wanted to impress them. I wanted to make money for my wife, I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good father. I didn't want to be like it was back in my hometown, back in the way it was. My mom and dad, violence and craziness and craziness. And so I went out there. I went and got a haircut, and they all laughed at me because I came out here with hair like this, And he goes, first of all, you got to go get a men's haircut. I said, okay, Wahoo. And so I go get a haircut, and I walked in the door, and they all laughed, every one of them. I didn't know what happened, but I guess it was a goofy haircut. Anyway, it was funny. And so I went out, and I started knocking doors, and this is I didn't know I was going to be good at this. I didn't know what I was good at, And I started knocking doors, and I started making money. And they called me the Oklahoma Kid. And I started making good money, And they were blown away because I'd go out and I'd knock these doors and I'd do the seams, vents, and edges. I'd come home because I was real proud of myself, and I'd show them the checks, and I'd get lots of praise. They would praise me and tell me they love me, and they would hug me, and we would have dinners and all that stuff. And then one day I was out and I ran across this on Wonderland Boulevard, and I knocked this door, and this guy come to the door. I go, can I do your roof? He goes, yeah, but do you want to make a trade? And I thought to myself, sure, what do you want to trade for? I'll try, I'm game, I like guns, and stuff like that. And he goes, well, he brought me out to his big garage, and he had a bunch of green stuff hanging upside down, man. And it stunk. I thought there was skunks, and I'd never smelt that stuff before. I didn't know what that was, He goes, I'll give you 7 ounces of this to do my roof. And I said, sure. And so we rolled up a hooter, and I hit it, and holy cow, woo! I fell in love. I got a beer immediately because it made me paranoid and thirsty. And so I started drinking about that time. And I was out here about 4 or 5 months before I started drinking. And I was doing really good, They were proud of me. They hadn't seen that part of Ron Harmon yet. The alcoholic, the liar, the guy that can't make it home, the violent guy. They hadn't seen me. All they seen was the guy that goes out and makes money and does good and loves their family, comes home and hugs everybody on time, and they hadn't seen that part of me yet. And so I start doing that, and I'm okay for a couple of weeks, and I end up back over at that guy's house again. I knock his door again, we're talking, he goes, have you ever tried any of this? And he had a mirror, and he had some white lines on it. I said, no, I never tried any of that, but I'm game. I did a line, and that wrecked me for another 30 years. And I drank and did methamphetamine for many, many, many years, and it just devastated my life at home. I'll never forget it, I'll never forget that time. I'll never forget what happened. My mom was a methamphetamine addict. I didn't know that until later, but my mom told me, yeah, she used to do methadone, and she was a speed addict. And as soon as I did that speed, I loved it. I fell in love. So I knew automatically my mom was probably getting loaded with me. In fact, when my mom brought me over, my dad said that she brought over had a little bottle of orange vodka in my bottle. That way I would sleep at night and she could go out. And so I started out pretty young. Whoa. Try to beat that. And so now I'm doing methamphetamine, and I'm drinking, and I'm not coming home. And I'm a gun collector. My dad was a big gun collector, and I was a big gun collector. And because when I'm knocking doors, I would talk to these guys, and I would paint their house or do their trim or do a roof, and they'd give me a rifle, a pistol, or whatever. And so I had a lot of guns at home, because I was really into that. And I started getting loaded like that, and then I started not coming home. And then me and Robin had to move from off the property because it was becoming scary. One day, I was drinking, and it was her brother's birthday, John. We're back on the back 10. I'm by the, I don't know about you guys, you ever go to a keg, and I always sat right by the keg. I wanted to make sure nobody, I had enough, and if you knew me and we was having a keg, you would know where to find me, right by the keg. I wouldn't be too far from the keg, and so Wahoo knew right where to find me, and he come and found me, and he goes, get in the truck, Ron. So I go, I'm drunk. I get in the truck, and we have to go down this big hill and up this other hill, and there's our property, his property, and on the way he goes, am I just going to have to shoot you? I said, don't shoot me, Wahoo. And it's because I left Robin home pregnant. She was pregnant. She was sad. She was young. And I'm out having fun, even though it's on the same property. And that's just a miracle that I was on the same property, because usually I was gone, chasing around. And pretty soon we had to move from there. We moved into Clear Creek Mobile Home Park, and we got into big fights. And I never dreamed that I would be a guy that would go to get a gallon of milk and wouldn't come home for 3 days. But that was me. And remember all those promises I made to myself when I was a kid, that I would never treat my family the way I was treated? That I would never become the person that my dad and my mom was? I made those promises. They were deep promises. They were meant promises. They were really, really important to me. One day I come home. Remember that fight my mom and dad got into over that pistol? I promised myself that me and my wife would never fight like that. I'll remember that promise. And it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. I walk in the door. She's pregnant with Jerry James. We're getting into a big fight. I'm going to leave because I can't quit getting loaded. And we're fighting. I'm loading up all my guns and everything. And we both go to reach for the one gun that was up in the closet. And we fought over that gun. It didn't go off, but we fought over that gun. The same thing my mom and dad did. I'll never forget that. I was becoming the exact same thing that my mom and dad was to my family. I wasn't coming home with a paycheck. I slapped her. I yelled at her. I screamed at her. I scared her. I left her. I wouldn't come home. And that's Ron Harmon's disease right there, man. That's what happened to me. And I couldn't stop. I wanted to stop getting loaded, but I couldn't stop, you guys. I was absolutely powerless. I started coming to AA in 1983 when she would leave me, and then I would come here. And I remember the first time she ever dropped me off, because she couldn't trust me to drive, she dropped me off over at the old club, and Jim B come up, he was there, and he come in, and he, we have the meeting, you know, and he comes up to me. This old man comes up to this young kid. I was 21, 22 years old. He goes, "Here's my number, you little son of a bitch," just like that. And he hands me this number, you know, and he goes, "Call me if you want a drink, 243-6002. I'll never forget that. I put it in my wallet, you know, and I went to meetings a couple of times, you know, and then all of a sudden I didn't want to drink or get loaded no more because I learned my lesson. She let me come back home. Everything was fine. And then one night, it happened again. I ended up at the Capri Hotel. It's snowing. She's pregnant. And she's pregnant, and it's probably November, December, somewhere in there. And it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. It's when I done all my best thinking. And I got a bunch of drugs, and and I'm drinking, and you know, and I'm not thinking too good of thoughts, you know, and I thought, I pulled that number out, you know, in my wallet, and I remember, oh yeah, Jim. I called Jim B at 2:30 in the morning, somewhere in there. He answered the phone, you know, and then he talked to me. He goes, "Where are you at?" I told him where I was at. "I'll be there in a minute." And he didn't wait to go get nobody else. He drove down by himself. It was an old pickup. And he drove to that room in his old pickup, and it was snowing outside. And he knocked on my door. And I answered the door, and he looked in my room. There's a bunch of, he goes, "Let's put the guns away first, Ron." So we put the guns away, man, and he talked to me a little bit, and he goes, "Get in the truck." So we drove up and went over here to this Safeway over here, and he got some orange juice and honey. He took me back home, and I'd been on a run for a couple of weeks. I was pretty burnt up, you know, and he made me drink some alcohol. He made me drink some orange juice and honey. And I started chugging it, you know, and he goes, no, you got to sip it, Ronnie. And then he got on his knees, and he had prayer with me. And I wish I could tell you I got sober. I wish I could tell you that was the end of my story, and I come to AA and everything was fine, but it was just the beginning. But I fell in love with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I fell in love with Jim B and his wife, Marge, and them people were good, so good to me. They let me sleep over at their house a few times. I didn't have no family because Robin had left me long ago. And I'll tell you one more story about Robin, and then I move on to getting clean and sober. So we're separated. We've been separated for a while. We get back together. We move into Hilltop Gardens apartment. And she's had Jerry James, you know, and she had Jerry James while I was in that hotel. And she came over and got me. She goes, "Do you want to go to Kmart with me?" And I said, "No, I don't want to go to Kmart with you. And so she goes to Kmart, and she calls me 10 minutes later and says, "Hey, my water just broke." And so we meet at the hospital, and I'm telling you, this is no truth. This woman's amazing. She had the baby in 45 minutes. Bam! I had this little boy, Jerry James, there, you know, and we had a little boy. We had Tilly Mae and Jerry James by then. And I wish I could tell you I raised them, but they left when they was pretty young because I just wasn't at home. But anyway, so we're over here at Hilltop Gardens Apartments, and I have Jerry James on my stomach. I have Tilly Mae over here, and I have Robin over here. And we're rolling around, tickling each other and having fun, and laughing, and I'm loving on them, And I told her, Robin, I got to go to work. And she goes, no, don't go to work today, Ronnie. Stay at home today. Just stay at home. And I said, no, I got to go to work. I got this roof I got to do, And she goes, okay, but if you go to work, and if you don't come home, I'm going to leave you, and I won't ever come back. And I thought, here's my thinking. I'm just going to go get a quarter, go do the job, get a six-pack, drink that on the way home the way I'm coming down real good, and then come see, be home by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? That's what my mind tells me. That's what's going to happen. And, we kiss, and I love on her, we tickle each other, and I get out the door, and I have a couple $100 in the horn that I had put away, saved, HO'd, whatever you want to call it. And I went and did what I did, and got the six-pack and started drinking, and I didn't make it home for 3 days. And when I got home, her mom and dad came over that night, and they unloaded that whole apartment and took her home to Happy Valley. And she never came back again. But to see the disease of my mind, my wife telling me who I loved, you guys, I loved her, man. I loved my kids. I really did. But the disease was so powerful in me that I couldn't stop. And my mind would tell me that I was going to do something different than what I always was going to do. I was just going to go get a little bit, drink a six-pack on the way home. That way I could be around my family, go to dinner, to have a fun time, right? And I got out there, started chasing around, and I couldn't make it home, man. For the life of me, I couldn't make it home. And that's what my disease is. That's the alcoholism. I didn't get it. I hated myself. And that's when I started punching myself. I woke up the next morning. Bam, I can't believe you. I hate you, you piece of crap. I hated myself. I hated myself, you guys. I hated that I couldn't quit. I hated that. I thought I was better than that. I made myself lots of promises. But the disease of alcoholism overpowered anything that I wanted to do. I didn't know the decision was already made, that if I get loaded, I'm going to get loaded. I'm just going to stay loaded. I didn't know that. I still really thought that I could do this and be okay, and that I could quit when I wanted to. But the disease had other plans. So she left, and she stayed gone, and I got worse and worse and worse. And in 1995, I was in this meeting right here. I was in not this meeting, but I was in a Tuesday meeting. Trenda was secretary in the meeting. I'll never forget it. In 1995, I was in the mission. I'd been in the mission 2 or 3 days, and I come to the meeting. I sit in the back and I cried real hard because I was so broken, just so hurt, And I was one of them emotional, and the book could talk about and write another chapter about, and that was me. And so we said the prayer at the end of the meeting, and Trenda come over and she grabbed my hand. I'll never forget it. She left the second when we said the Lord's Prayer, and she grabbed my hand and we said the Lord's Prayer. And she just said, Ron, it's going to be okay. Keep coming back. And I moved that day. I went to Butte County. That was a real good move. I went to a place called Skyway House, and I was in and out of that place 6 times. Couldn't get sober. And then I got busted in Butte County. It was on the news. There was a lot of stuff. It was a big bust, and I go to jail, and I don't know about you guys. When I always went to jail here probably 20 times. I was in this jail in Shasta County. So I start going to jail in Butte County, Butt County, I like to call it. But anyway, a cop in Oklahoma called it that. She didn't know it was Butte County. She goes, Ron, what do they want for $55,000 in Butt County for? I'll tell that story maybe. So anyway, that's the one that Larry likes. Anyway. I go to jail, and I promise myself I'm going to go to AA, and I'm going to get sober, and I'm in there for 6 months, and I promise them they give me 5 years of felony probation. And I had a lot of drugs when I got busted, and so I got out of jail. I didn't have to go to prison. It was a big deal. It was a miracle. It really was. And so I get out, and I'm at the Connections house that day drinking, and I end up loaded again. And then I go on the run. Me and my girlfriend get into a fight. And she's the one that bailed me out of jail. We get into a fight, and I'm a nice guy. So I just put a brand new stereo in her truck. We're headed up to Paradise, California, and all I'm doing now is drinking and smoking pot. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm not doing no drugs. I'm good now, I got this under control. And I'm a violent drunk. And anyway, we're driving up the Skyway. She starts yelling at me about something. I turn the stereo up. It's a pull. She pulls the stereo out and starts clocking me with bam, bam, bam. And so I bounce her head off the steering wheel. And she jumps out of the truck and runs down the road screaming. And I get arrested again, this time for domestic violence. And I go back to jail with the felony, and then I go, you know what? I go back to jail with the felony and of that right there, and they let me out of jail again. And this time she had moved to Missouri. She calls me up, she goes, Ron, won't you come back to Missouri and stay there? I'm on the run from the cops. They're going to every place I'm on the run. I said, that's a good idea. So I go back there, me and her get in a fight. I don't stay there, I'm there a month or so. I go to Oklahoma, where my parents are, where I came from. And I get arrested. And this is the woman, I was a waiter at this restaurant, and this woman cop used to come into this restaurant, and I would wait on her. She was cute too. I would wait on her, and I think, maybe one night, it's just like that. You know your mind. And so one night I'm leaving, I got another job, I have a second job, and I'm leaving that job. It's snowing outside. I forgot to turn my lights on, and this woman in this office, this other guy pulls me over. And I think somebody called the cops on me. They pull me over, and she comes up the door and she goes, Ron, do you got a tattoo on your shoulder that says Robin? I said, no. She goes, step out of the car. I step out of the car and she rolls my sleeve up. There's Robin, sure enough, running across my right shoulder. And she goes, what does Butt County want with you for $55,000? And so I got arrested. And I used to drive by the Oklahoma County Jail, and I think, thank God I never have to go back there, man. Oh, I'm so grateful I don't ever have to go back to that place, And then there I was, right back in that place. Again, it had been a few years since I'd been there, but I was right back in Oklahoma County Jail. And so I get extradited to go back to Butte County. And that's when they come and pick me up in this van, and it had a little wheel in the middle of this van in the back. And they handcuffed me, and plus they made me wear my old clothes that I'd come from working that day. They put me in those old clothes. There's about 6 guys in there, and none of them smell very good. And I didn't either. And they handcuffed me to this thing, and they handcuffed my body, and they handcuffed my feet, and I ride in the back of a van, just like that for 12 days. And I hit every county jail in America, I think. Lincoln, Nebraska is the worst. I got to tell you, that county jail sucks. I'm going to tell you right now, it's the worst county jail I've ever been in. I made it to Willett, Missouri County Jail. I ran Gallup, Mexico County Jail. That was a good one. And I made it to Gallup, New Mexico County. And then I made it to North and South Las Vegas County Jail. And then, I've never been so happy to end up in Butte County Jail. Man, when we pulled into Butte County, I seen that guy. I was like, thank God, man. I get out of there and they send me to prison. Now, when I'm in court that time, I have a lawyer named William Short. He comes up, he goes, Ron, the judge says it. The judge says, I don't want to send this guy to prison. Counsel approached the bench. So I'm thinking, cool, I'm going to get one more chance. I'm not going to have to go to prison. But the DA goes up there, who's a redhead, and she has short hair about like this right here. And I never knew you could have a flying saucer of red hair like that. Her head was going like this, no, 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 no. And my lawyer come back and says, you're going to prison. So I went to prison, and that started my prison stints. I went to prison 4 times, and every single time I went to prison, I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to get loaded no more, that I was going to go to AA and get sober. But as soon as I got out, I met Mick that way. Larry come and picked me up, and it's the first time I ever met Mick, and they took me, the first time I got out of prison, New Folsom, and they took me out, and I went back 4 more times. So I'm going to shoot right on. There's a lot of things that happen in between there, but I end up in a 12-foot trailer down a 2-mile dirt road in Palermo, California. And I've been through 4 or 5 more treatment centers. I've lost a house. I've lost relationships. I've been to jail many times. I've lied, cheated, stole, got into fights. Tried to quit desperately in church. I tried so hard to quit in church. I had some people that loved me in church. Another thing, everybody that ever met me, and this is the truth and tried to help me, were good people and they loved me. But I was incapable of being helped. And I didn't know that. At that point I was with my mind. And so I'm in that, and Larry was calling me, and he was saying, hey, how are you doing today, Ronnie? And I said, I'm all right. And he would say, well, you can come stay on my couch if you ever want to. Because he'd seen me going in and out of this church trying to get sober in this program. And it wasn't working. And I said, Larry, my phone's fixing to get turned off. And this is around November, or I don't know, October, November, somewhere in there. And I kept my phone plugged in, it got turned off. And another thing is I didn't care that my phone got turned off. I didn't care. And that was weird for me because that's how I made my money, And he called me, my phone rang. I go, what the hell's my phone? I was through Metro. He called me, and it's Larry. He went and paid my bill at Metro. He says, are you having fun yet? And I said, no, I'm not having fun. I go, what are you doing, Larry? He goes, I'm making mashed potatoes, gravy, pork chops, green beans. My mouth started watering, man. Oh, God, that sounded good. And I hadn't eaten nothing but peanut butter and syrup for 6 months, And I was stealing that from the people next door. And so that happened a couple of times. And then one late night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was laying there in that bed in that travel trailer, and I said, God, please help me. And it wasn't like that. It was like this. It was like, God, please help me. And I'd said, God, please help me a few times, but I don't know what was different about this time. But this time here, the next morning I woke up, and I said, why don't you just go visit Larry? And I got in my van. I had an old van, and I throwed some stuff in a black bag, and I came up here. And I knocked on his door. It was a Tuesday, I think, and he opened the door, and I haven't got loaded since that day. That was 2010, January 4th of 2010. Thank God, and he brought me to AA the next morning, 7 o'clock. I was detoxing real hard. And here's another thing I think was from God. That decision that morning was straight from God. Because I didn't drink nothing, I didn't smoke nothing, I didn't take nothing. And I just said, I don't want to disrespect him and go up there and be loaded. So I didn't take nothing that morning. And I know that was from God. And I know the decision to come to Redding was from God. Because I didn't want to go to Redding. The last place I wanted to come was Redding AA. I promise you that. Because I tried this. And I thought I was a success down there for a while. I was a real success down there for a while. So I thought it was okay. And I'm bragging to everybody, yeah, I'm okay. I don't need AA. I'm good, And, blah. And I end up back here. And I'm back there, and Jim B. sitting beside me. I raised my hand in 30 days, and I go, my first thought was, I know this ain't going to work because I've tried it so many times. And my next thought was, and I know this is from God, I'm going to get a sponsor, and I'm going to do the steps the best I can. And the next day I got a sponsor at the Men's Stag. Adam took me to the Men's Stag, and a couple of weeks ago I got a sponsor, and his name's Doug, and just absolutely amazing sponsor, an absolutely amazing man. He didn't spend just an hour at a time with me. He spent a couple hours sometimes, and he worked the steps and read the steps with me, and he just really, I tell you about that resentment I had towards my mom. I got on the fourth step, right, and we got to the fourth column. He goes, I don't care what they did to you, because I could have wrote a whole book of what they did to me, and I got to that fourth column, and I started writing down what I did to them. I'd stole her car. I didn't go visit her when she was in the hospital. I lied to her. I OD'd in the living room. I kicked her one time for beating up my dad. Just insane stuff, you guys. I stole guns from my dad. I stole money from my dad. I got kicked out of school. I stole anything I could get. I lied to them. I'd done everything in the world. I didn't remember any of that stuff. And I had to write all that stuff down that I did to my mom and dad. And it changed my thinking completely. I had a click happen in that fourth step to where, whoa, my life is my fault. It's the biggest deal that ever happened to me. It ain't nobody else's fault. It's my fault. I made all those decisions. It's not nobody else's fault. And that big click happened in the fourth step, on the fourth column. And that happened with everybody that I ever met. Because I'm a 6'3", 260-pound victim. That's crazy, huh? And if you were my friend and I loved you, I tried to beat you up probably. Just the way it was. And I needed to go to Al-Anon because I was beating up all my friends in AA. Trying to. Because I wanted them to get sober. And that's a whole nother story. I'll do that in my Al-Anon speech. Anyway, I got sober, man, and you know, a lot of things happened, and I got to go make amends. And my sponsor, Doug, I got busted for contracting without a license. And I couldn't believe it. I'm driving back, and I'm mad. I'm going, God, I thought we had this. You know, I've been contracting without a license for 20 years and never got in trouble. You know, I get sober, and I get busted for contracting without a license, and I get in trouble. God, what's up? You know, what the heck? You know, and I'm really upset, you know. And so, because it's scary, you know, and so I'm driving home and I go and I tell my sponsor, and he goes, well, have you ever tried to get a contractor's license? I said, no, I have too many felonies and I'm not smart enough to pass the test. And he goes, no, I didn't ask you that. He goes, have you ever tried to get a contractor's license? And I said, no. He goes, well, let's try and see what happens. And so he types up and he gets all the papers printed up for me to fill out. You know, I go home. It takes me 3 or 4 days to fill the papers out. I meet him again at his office, and he looks at my contractor paper. I mean, it took me a long time to fill these papers out. I spent a lot of time filling these things out. I'm telling you, it was a lot of work. He's looking at them. He's reading them. He crushes them up and throws them in the paper, man. Oh, I pissed off. He goes, it looks like a kindergartner filled those out. And it pissed me off bad. But what he did was, he got on the computer, and me and him typed up my contractor's list, you know, the application. And then we sent it in, and I'd be darned if they didn't send me back a test date. I got a test date to do my contractor's license, you know, and so I get the kit and I start studying for it, you know, and I go home, and I'm studying at night for it. I live right over here by the Alano Club in those apartments over there. And I study for it, and then I go down to Sacramento, and I get into the room with these guys, you know I ain't going to pass it because my mind frazzled every time I looked at the test. They just frazzled. There's 200 questions on the law, you know, and all that stuff. And so I got in there, and I took the test, the law first, and then it says you can push the button, and it'll tell you if you passed or if you failed. Or you can wait, and they can mail it to you. And I'm an alcoholic. I can't wait. So I pushed, knowing I failed, because I didn't know all the questions, and I pushed the button and it said pass, and I said, yeah, you know. And then it came to the craft part of it, another 150 or 60 questions, you know, of just the trade, questions about the trade. And I didn't know nothing about the trade. I knew about painting, but it asked about wallpaper and all kinds of different things that I had nothing about. And so I take that test, not thinking I passed. I really believed I didn't pass it, and I pushed the button. It said passed. I grabbed the little woman, was like this, she's real skinny. Yeah, and I picked her up like this right here. Nobody else in the room did that. So I got my contractor's license, man. And I'll tell you a little story. I'm on my way home, and I'm calling all my friends, and Ray Tony helped with that. He encouraged me. And Larry helped me with that. You know, my sponsor really helped me with that. So usually they give your license within 6 weeks of taking the test. Well, it took 13 to get my license. Because I passed the test, but they still had to give me my license number. But my criminal history had to clear. And so that's what took so long so I'm knowing I'm not going to get my license because of my criminal history. And 13 weeks later, this lady calls me, she goes, Ron, look on the website. I go to the website and it says 970298, I got my contractor's license, and they passed my criminal history, and it was just a miracle. It was a miracle. Alcoholics Anonymous did that. My sponsor pushed me into doing that. He was such a good man to me, you know, and he helped me see things that I couldn't see. My buddy Larry has been there since 1990, taking my phone calls from prison, talking to me, being kind to me, becoming my family. I've made my family in these rooms, you know. My whole life is in these rooms, you know. I'm Ron Harmon, you know, and I'm an alcoholic, and I just couldn't get past that. I couldn't stay sober for nothing, you guys. I was broken to pieces. I couldn't quit going to prison. I didn't have my family in my life for years and years and years, and today my son's in my life. He's in jail right now. He's got the disease I got. My daughter lives in Escanaba, Michigan. I've been back to visit her 6 times and made amends to her. I flew back to Oklahoma, made amends to my mom. So I fly back to Oklahoma, and my mom's in the car, and we're going to the restaurant, right? It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I go, Mom, I need to talk to you. She goes, okay. And I go, I was wrong, and I started naming off all this list that I did, right? And all she says, I forgive you for that, Ronnie Lee. We get to the restaurant, she orders a margarita. She's okay, man. She's fine. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, you know, and we've been friends ever since. I talk to her quite often. You know, I care about her. I don't want to live around her, but I care about her. I went up to Oregon, and this right here gets you. My wife lived up in Oregon, and I picked her up because she had her car in the shop, and so I said, Robin, I need to talk to you. And so I started making amends, and I started naming off all these things. Now this is a get you right here. I started naming off all these things that I did to her, you know, and there was plenty of them. And then I go, is there anything I left out that you need to talk to me about? Don't ask twice that, you know. She goes, yeah, there was a phone number in my wallet, and it had Lisa on it. I don't remember the name. And she goes, who was that? I didn't remember, and I said, I don't know, Robin. I don't remember really. You know, I'm sure it was some girl I met, you know. And she goes, there's one other thing. You come home from work and you was in the shower up at Clear Creek, you know, in the mobile home. You was taking a shower. I was in the front making cheeseburgers, hamburgers. And I hollered back at you, do you want cheese on your burger, Ron? And you didn't answer. And so I hollered back again, hey, Ron, do you want cheese on your burger? And she goes, I went back there and you'd snuck out the back door, got in your truck and drove away. And she remembered that. Ripped my heart out. You know, so she got to tell me some things that still bothered her. We're friends today. We talk about our son and our daughter. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me all my family back. And it's given me new family members. I got sponsees in here that I love to death, man. I got my nephew here, you know, that's gotten sober. That's a miracle. You know, I got a paint crew. I have a paint crew that I love. That's all of them's in recovery, you know. And Alcoholics Anonymous is my life, like I said. And you know, there's a lot I left out. There's a lot more that I wanted to say. There's a lot of things that I could have talked about. But I guess this is what God wanted me to talk about because I prayed before I got up here. Ron, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth, you know. And that's what I'm going to try to do today is just tell the truth everywhere I go. And thanks for me sharing. Thanks. And my name's Ron, and I'm an alcoholic.